Hello everybody, this is Timothy Mark with Alexandria.
How's everybody doing today?
And we are World Paranormal Research Society. The website's World Paranormal Research Society.org. O-R-G. YouTube channel, World Paranormal Research Society. Click the like buttons on there and subscribe to our channel. What I would like to tell you is that today's topic is going to be on succubus, incubus, and Lilith, because we cannot talk about succubus and incubus without first mentioning Lilith. Now, who was Lilith? Lilith was the first wife of Adam. Now, that's not going to be in your Christian Bible, of course, but if your Christian Bible, when I say Christian Bible, I mean the King James Version. It is in Judaism books and their stories of Genesis and stuff like that. But let's understand this. Lilith, if you look at your King James Version Bible, you see there's a very distinct two creation stories. There's chapter 1 and chapter 2. I got a book coming out on both of these soon. Okay. What you're seeing is a summary of both creation stories. In chapter 1, male and female were created at the exact same time. Lilith was Adam's first wife. Now, we know this through ancient texts, not just Judeo texts, but we know it through Sumerian texts and other texts as well. If you look at the ancient writings of Mesopotamia, she's mentioned in there. And actually, if you're wondering about Lilith, if you open up your King James Version Bible, turn to Isaiah 34, chapter 34, she is referred to in chapter 34. Conveniently, she was removed from Genesis chapter 1. The reason why she was removed from Genesis chapter 1 is because traditional Christianity wanted you to think that females was to be submissive to men and a lower form of human. Lilith being created at the same time as man, male and female created at the exact same time in Genesis 1. Go and read that. They were. And so when Adam was trying to tell her to do stuff, she said, "You're not over me because we were created at the exact same time." It goes back to the serpent, which I'll refer to here in a little bit, but Lilith ended up leaving the Garden of Eden, leaving her husband, and getting with an angel Samuel.
Samuel, you mean?
Samuel, yeah. And so they ended up having a relationship and offspring and things of that nature. So, before we get too much, I'll come back to Lilith later. We're going to talk about succubus and incubus. What is your thoughts on the two creations? In Genesis chapter 2, Adam was made as Eve was made as Adam's second wife, but she was taken from his side, so it was flesh of his flesh, so she was to be submissive to Adam.
I'm not even going to comment on the submissive part, because in a lot of these podcasts I'm very vocal, but I do, to me the Lilith is very important, and it just goes to show you that you can't take one particular source as word of law. I mean, I truly believe that Lilith did exist, and I invite all of you to do more of your research after this podcast in regards to this amazing. I think she's an amazing woman, and I think that she. It's something that should be delved into more deeply, and to go into anything like we ask you in all these podcasts, go in with an open mind, with the knowledge that you're going to be seeking some information. And what I'm going to talk to you all about today is Incubus.
So hold on, before we get to Incubus, and as I said about the serpent. Now, Lilith was when she removed herself from the Garden of Eden, she actually removed herself and got with an angel. If you go back and look at the old Jewish, I'm talking about ancient, not just Judeo, but Mesopotamian writings and their drawings and things of that nature. In their literature, she was actually referred to as having what is it? What's it called when you're characteristics of a snake. Not just a snake, but a snake and a bird. So that goes to the story of when Eve was walking in the Garden of Eden and she was confronted by the serpent. We assumed the serpent to be Satan. What if the serpent was Lilith? This is just some questions that you need to ask yourself and things of that nature.
While we stay on this topic, and I'm going to jump in here too, and I may stand corrected. Timothy will probably jump in, and if I'm wrong, but this is something that's very important too. Is it not Lilith who brought upon the suffering of childbirth and menstruation for women? Isn't that a story that it relates to?
No, that is not.
Okay,
That is not true. It was not Lilith that is to blame for the suffering that is at childbirth and the menstrual cycle and things of this nature. It's not Lilith. It was Eve, actually. Now, Lilith could have been the serpent in that convinced her to take part in the fruit, the forbidden fruit, from the tree of knowledge. And she would have had a role in it that way if that serpent was actually Lilith. Eve, because she did what she did, if you read the story of Adam and Eve, Eve was to blame for the pain and suffering of childbirth.
Okay, but there's a story too that at one point Lilith was asked, was it by God or an angel, to go back to Adam, and she flat out refused. Am I confusing this yet again?
No, you're not confusing it. I don't know if it was God or an angel that asked Lilith to do this. I would assume that if God wouldn't have asked her, he would have told her. But
isn't there a legend too with Lilith that if she refused to come back, her children were to be killed? I'm almost positive I read that.
But she had offspring with an angel.
Okay.
And so that's why we associate her offspring as being the incubus and the succubus, that we're going to go into these stories of succubus and incubus of the Samuel, right?
Samuel is an angel, yes.
The angel. And Lilith. Now when you think of succubus and you think of incubus, they would be their offspring. Yeah.
Okay, so that does have a little bit of truth into. I probably didn't present it in the proper format, but I do recall reading that somewhere, and I think it was something to do with a Jewish or a Hebrew text in regards to Lilith, because she's mentioned quite frequently, as you said, in their writings. Is that not correct?
Yeah, she is, and actually not just in Judeo writings and Sumerian writings and in writings that you find in the libraries that used to be in Mesopotamia, but also St. Augustine, who was a Christian philosopher, actually referred to her in his writings as well.
Okay, but before we go into the succubus and incubus, my question to you and to everybody out there that's listening, why was a reference to her just completely annihilated from the Bible?
And I just explained that.
I know that, but
and the reason why it was annihilated was for two reasons. One of them being the people who compiled the story of the current Bible that you have, the King James Version, or the Bibles that you'd find inside America in their Christian bookstores. It was to say that women are not equal to man. But originally, women were created equal to man.
And didn't we find out, we spoke to an individual yesterday that was watching a documentary about the translation of the King James Bible from Latin. So this was done in Tudor times, and as we know, Tudor times reflects King Henry VIII, where of course women were submissive. So why would you put something in any kind of a Bible that would show that women had a right to be equal?
Now what he was saying, all right, let's put this in perspective. When we talked to this individual yesterday, he calls the Bible, he refers to the Bible, he says the New Testament. So in his mind, because he is a Christian, he believes that the Bible is the New Testament. So if you look at the fact that the Latin alphabet was not written until after the runic alphabet, right? So you're talking about after the time that Christ died. The Bible actually consists of the Old Testament. Lilith was mentioned in the Old Testament, and so it was written in a completely different language.
Okay, so I'm glad you clarified that, because you clarified that for me and probably a lot of your listeners. And really, we're going to get into the definitions, or really get down to the foundations of who these specific characters were, Incubus and Succubus. I don't know if you want me to
you can go ahead
dive right into it. And you may know, you may not know, Incubus is considered, they say, Lilith. So I don't know if that's an abbreviation of Lilith, but that's what I've found. It's spelled Lilin, Lilith. And
that's in the Mesopotamian text. Am I correct?
That's correct, but it's a demon in male form. So I'm talking about the male counterpart. So Incubus is male, who, according to mythology and legendary traditions, lies upon sleeping women in order to engage in sexual activity with them. Okay, sexual activity, but we had a discussion prior to this podcast that it was not just sexual activity, it could be the draining of energy, almost like we consider psychic vampires, that they will drain your life force, your energy, so you will wake up completely drained, and of course throwing in the sexual activity. And tales of incubi, they call incubi, have been told for many centuries in traditional societies, and some traditions hold that repeated sexual activity with the incubus may result in a complete deterioration of health, mental state, and even in the finality of death. So that, I mean, they're saying sexual activity, but certainly if somebody's draining your energy, your life force, that's gonna, all these things can happen as well. But I think maybe they thought it was more horrendous, or more what's the proper word I'm trying to find, heinous or heinous, if it was referring to sexual activity, but certainly mental activity as well. And the word incubus is derived from late Latin. It's called incudo, and it's mean a nightmare induced by such a demon, and from incubub, which is to lie upon. So this is late Latin that the name actually is derived from. And one of the earliest mentions of an incubus comes from, again, we're mentioning Mesopotamia on the Sumerian king list, and it's 2400 BC, where the hero Gilgamesh's father is listed as, there it is again, Lilu. And it is said that this Lilu disturbs and seduces women in their sleep. Have you heard anything about Gilgamesh's father being considered an incubus?
No, I have not heard that his father was an incubus, but what I do know is that the Samaritan stone, which predates any Bible story that we have written in any kind of language, does it talk about the epic of Gilgamesh, and if you read it, it's pretty interesting, because it contains the flood, it contains Lilith, the story of Lilith, and it contains the story of Adam and Eve, and it's a very interesting stone to read, and anything after that with similar stories is just watered down and alternate versions of the original story. Okay,
but I think what they're trying to say, and I may sound corrected, is that Gilgamesh is the product or the offspring of an incubus, if his father was.
It's possible.
Because they said that sometimes these sexual dalliances or sexual relationships with women produced children. So that would, I mean, Gilgamesh could have been the product of his father being an incubus with a woman. I mean, that stands to reason. There's another important figure in history that is said to be the product of an incubus, and that is Merlin the magician. There has been writings that Merlin was the product of a dalliance between an incubus and a mortal woman. And you know what, if we stop on that topic ever so briefly, there's actually mention of angels coming down and having sexual relationships with women.
And that's written into the modern day version Bible that you have, or if you do have a Bible, if you go purchase one, that story is actually in the book of Genesis. However, when you get to King James VI, he changed it up. He tried to eliminate the fact that King James VI, a king, tried to change it up. He wanted the story changed where angels could not have offspring, demons could not have offspring.
Yeah, but I wonder why he would think that. Like, what's his train of thought of that? Like, why? Was that going to hurt something with his authority over his people? Like, why do that?
It's just like why the presidents do the things they do today and hide this extraterrestrial and UFO technology from us, because he was trying to obtain power. And he did not want people to think that there was beings out there that were offsprings of angels or demons, and people would be hunting them and trying to use them.
So this is the beginning of a conspiracy theory. So he wanted to just obliviate that from any common person being able to have access to that knowledge. Correct?
It goes all the way back to King James.
Wow, I mean, debate over these demons began early in Christian traditions. St. Augustine, you mentioned again, touched on the topic in Civil Di. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's translated into the city of God. And there were many alleged attacks by incubi that was able to counteract what he read in there. So that's very, very important. And the other names that have been given to incubus is Sylvans and Fauns. And I know a lot of you out there, some of you may not know, Fauns, Fauns, is actually associated with Pan. Pan was called a faun, and as you know, Pan was a male deity that actually was having sex with women and invited, it says, some of the angels to come down to have sexual relations with women. So again, there's a correlation with the legend of Pan, and we know Pan is a goat, and he was very prolific. Questions about the reproductive capabilities of these demons continued. There was the philosophies, people of the time were always debating on whether this was possible or not. So that issue was in constant debate whether they could reproduce. And 800 years later, Thomas Aquinas lent himself to the discussion, stating, still, and this is quotations, still, if some are occasionally begotten from demons, it is not from the seed of such demons, nor from their assumed bodies, but from the seed of men taken for the purpose, as when the demon assumes. What he's trying to say is that there's two specific ways that offspring can be formulated from these unions, and apparently it is if they can take it from a corpse, or they take it from a man that's actually living, and they take the seed from other things for generating these purposes. I don't know if you've heard of this before, the two ways. They're saying that there's a limited amount of time that they can change from an incubus to a succubus to collect that nocturnal emission. This is what Thomas Aquinas was trying to say.
Yeah, well, that's what Thomas Aquinas was trying to say, and what he was trying to say was, they try to take it from corpses. There's a lot of people that used to think that a succubus and incubus was the same thing. However, we do know, just like we're talking about the offspring of Lilith and the angel, they had male and female kids. And so you have the incubus, which is male, and then you have the succubus, two separate things. This guy, clearly, maybe he was bisexual, whatever, I don't know. But yeah, no, I do not believe that an incubus turns into a succubus and a succubus turns into an incubus. I believe them to be two separate things.
And the funny thing is that this particular view that Thomas Aquinas held was also shared by King James. And in this dissertation, the title, Demonology, he actually wrote a book. He refutes the possibility for angelic entities to reproduce, and instead offered the suggestion that a devil would carry out these two methods of impregnating women, again by the corpses and interchanging incubus and succubus to be able to collect. That's what King James thought.
King James was somebody who was trying to erase the fact that initially he may have thought that, but he definitely is credited. King James VI was credited with getting rid of the fact that angels and demons can have offspring.
And then, according to, we all know the Malus Maleficum, which is also the witch's hammer, they give 5 ways that you can overcome the attack of an incubi. The first one they mention is exorcism. The second is sacramental confession. The third is the sign of the cross. The fourth is moving the afflictive person to another location. And then fifth is excommunication completely out of the area. So the witch's hammer had 5 ways. I mean, this is saying that the witch's hammer recognized that incubus did exist. And we know that during the witch trials all over Europe, millions and millions of people were tortured and burnt at the stake based on the witch's hammer. So they did acknowledge that incubus and succubus did exist, giving these 5 particular means to get rid of them.
Millions of people?
You know, when you go through Europe and then you talk about Salem and stuff, it did, even with the Inquisition, it did get rid of, I think, really millions of people.
Okay.
That's not an exact number, but when you know, all through Europe with the witches that were, or reputable witches that were, you know, rid of, I think it's in that number.
Could be. Or if you put it in context of over 100 years or so like that.
Way over 100 years.
Yeah, a few hundred years. So succubus, sorry y'all, but succubus is different from incubus, and the succubus is referred to as the Lilith demon. They will deteriorate your health, cause you to have mental problems, and may even cause death. Like people, how many times you heard of people dying in their sleep or dying in the bed, you know? So who knows if this is what happened. Lilith were considered hostile night spirits that attack men. This also includes the sons and daughters of Lilith. So I'm sorry, I can't talk right now. I've got a cough here. So in the Kabbalah, the original 3 queens. Okay, here's what I want to say. All right, now Lilith herself cannot have offsprings with humans. She can't do that, according to everything that's ever been written about Lilith, because she's had offsprings with that angel Samuel, and so however, there is 3 demon queens that can have offspring with humans. I'm not going to mention their whole names, and I'm going to mispronounce them a little bit because I don't want people trying to conjure them. But Agrat was one of the queens of the demons, Nehemiah and Ishahath. And they can actually give birth after having sex with male humans. They can give birth to other succubi or incubus or things.
So
like
what
that.
would the result of this offspring be? Would they be human? Would they be demon? Or what is the result?
I have no idea.
That would be interesting.
Obviously, they were, and you know, we only thinking that they're demon. They've been referred to as demon, but what if they're not? I mean, because Samuel was an angel, so and Lilith, of course, was disobedient to God, and so maybe they were demon, maybe they're part angel. We don't know, but to sustain their own energy, that's why they drain energy from people so that they can sustain their own energy. Kind of like not just with them, but even with ghosts and you know, if you go into a haunted location and you start to feel weak and you feel like your energy is being drained, ghosts can do that as well, and they're doing that to increase their energy.
Yeah, we call that psychic vampires for all you out there. That it's a being that has the ability to psychically drain you. And when you encounter one, sometimes you can be sick for days and days after and not understand what happened to you.
So, going into the story of Lilith, Adam's first wife, who left to mate with the archangel Samuel, they definitely had a lot of offsprings. If you think of the sirens, if you ever heard of sirens, the demon women they referred to, or the succubus women that affected sailors and would cause their ships to wreck and things of that nature. If you watch the movie "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," and you have the women in the river. They were in the river and they were bathing. These would be a representation or what the sirens look like. And so, as we mentioned, St. Augustine talked about such sexual creatures in his writings. And have you ever heard the word strumpet? What you think of when you hear the word strumpet?
Strumpet is like a trollop, a woman of ill repute.
Yeah, that's a strumpet. When you hear strumpet, strumpets actually was an original term that was used to refer to the succubus as a strumpet.
Like a tart.
Yep, strumpet. It is said that in the Jewish and Sumerian texts, and now let's look at religious texts, because we're not just pulling this stuff out of the air. We research this stuff, okay? When you look at the Jewish text, which has is considered factual, and you look at the Sumerian text, which the Jewish text, in my opinion, was taken from, in both of those texts, they refer to succubus, and they refer to them as being creatures that are, like you say, psychic vampires that steal energy from you. And they will have, like, if you ever had a wet dream at night, you know, if you woke up, if you're male, you woke up and you have Cain come, and during the night, then they say that that's a succubus that has caused that to happen. With women, I'm not a woman, so I don't know about y'all's nocturnal.
Well, they even mentioned that, I did recall reading in the Bible, it's called nocturnal emissions. And there's one point where God is saying that you have to be cleaned of any kind of nocturnal emissions.
Okay, what I want to do is I want to give you a timeline. Okay, so just so you know how far back this stuff goes. So you know during the time Christ existed, but before that it's considered BC, before Christ. So 1800 to 1700 BCE, before Christ existed. There is in Babylon, there is a stone that is carved, and it dates back, like I said, to 1700, 1800 BCE. Well, 1800 or 1700, because it goes backwards that way. But during that time, they drew an image of this creature that people were seeing that was Lilith, and she had the feet of a bird. And so you can Google that. It's called the Buni relief of Babylon. And so that would be like the earliest drawings or cave drawings of Lilith, which would be 1800 to 1700 before Christ existed. So if we go to 600 BC in Mesopotamia, there is the Epic of Gilgamesh, which you brought up before, but it dates to 600 before Christ existed, and that also refers to Lilith. Okay. Now, let's talk to the Christians out there for a moment. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, you have a book called The Songs of the Sage. And in it is a list of monsters. So the Songs of the Sage is the title of the book that's mentioned in the Dead Sea Scrolls. In that, there's a list of monsters, and Lilith's name is mentioned in this as being a monster. It's a list of monsters. And on ancient Jewish bowls and amulets from the 6th century, Christ existed. So during the time of Christ, when he existed, Lilith was called a female demon. So now I'm trying to just go ahead and tell you that, okay, this was something that was very much factual to people, and it was very much something that was very real. So real, in fact, that she's listed in the Songs of the Sage. I mean, you know, it's a book that's not in your modern day Bible, because with good old Constantine and all the priests that came together, maybe they got sidetracked looking for little boys. I don't know, but during that time when they got sidetracked, they cut out Songs of the Sage. It is no longer in the Bible, but you can find it in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and you can find it in older Bibles. And so that's something that I find very interesting.
And another since we're talking about Lilith as well, is that in our line of work, again, we always like to stress that we like to keep informed on different things. And I also have, I was mentioning to Timothy on several occasions, an Aramaic incantation bowl. And I was actually doing some research on it. As we know, Aramaic is a language that Jesus was supposed to have spoken. And
it's interesting that you say a bowl, because what I was just, when you went to go get that, what I was just telling them was that on Jewish bowls that date towards the time that Christ existed, there was pictures of Lilith on those bowls.
And that's why I wanted to tie this into it, because this particular bowl, and it was prevalent in, Timothy said, Jewish Hebrew homes. It's said to expel demons, protect houses. It's a devil trap bowl, and it's face down, protect from the evil eye, and to protect from Lilith. And it says, one of the inscriptions, it says, for evil Liliths that I'm casting. And it's just a way of, it tells you what you have. It's an incantation, once you get your bowl, how to rid your household of Lilith. And it does make into any name that it has appeared to them in a dream of the night, in the sleep of the day. So this is the Aramaic way to get rid of Lilith, and they do mention her name in what you're supposed to chant with this Aramaic incantation bowl. So reference, or trying to rid individuals of Lilith, Incubus, and Succubus has been around, for a very, very long time. Again, we touch on Mesopotamia, which is 2400 BC, in the hero Gilgamesh. They're saying his father was...
the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, you have a date there, 2400 before Christ existed, right?
Right, that's where they're talking about Gilgamesh, and his father being... they're saying that his father was an incubus.
Now, the thing to the Epic of Gilgamesh is dated to 600 BC, but that's called the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, before that, on the Sumerian stones and things of that nature, there was the story of Gilgamesh that was written on a stone, and like Alexandria said, that dates back to, you said, 2400 BC?
That's right. That's where it's on the Sumerian king list, where they make mention of that. And if you further go into the Aramaic incantation bowl, it's quite interesting. They have various steps and incantation, and it does mention different things. They even mention the law of Moses. They mention the angels Gabriel, Michael, Raphael, and Uriel, and these are quite instrumental in banishing demons. So it really goes to show you that back in those times, again, Lilith is expressed, or she is named as a demon, and they must have had a lot of problems with succubus and Lilith bothering a lot of male people, because for them to have a specific Aramaic...
Not just male, but female, because if you look at, when you look at beds, right? Old beds, remember the old beds that you look at, like an old film or something that's in the desert, and people are trying to keep mosquitoes out, and they have this netting around
mosquito or bug nets.
But before it was ever a bug net, it was actually called a demon net. It was actually something to keep demons from messing with you during your sleep. And it was later used to fight insects and things of that nature. But originally, they had this netting that was made to keep demons out. And it was sold. It was like when people bought sheets or covers or things of that nature, they would also buy this netting to keep the demons away while they were asleep.
I think that's quite interesting how something very old has been adapted or taken now into more modern times, and their use has changed slightly, or maybe it's just that the train of thought or the way of thinking now is not it's a demon. I mean, we all know that mosquitoes and bugs, we call them little demons, but people don't really mention that, or I think it's the fear of mentioning it now in modern times.
Well, mosquitoes and bugs are not demons, but yeah, you're saying that they call them demons, but
yeah, but they're not. But I'm just saying they've adapted something for one use into another use.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't,
Well, the netting was very different too. Like I was just giving you the bug netting as one instance. Like the netting was very tight netting, netting to keep the bugs out, but to keep the demons out, it wasn't as tight. It was more loose, and the holes were a little bigger. But it was this holy netting that kept you from being bothered by demons.
Yeah, but another, when you were talking about succubus too, I want to put this out there, and I mean, maybe it's not factual, but right away I think of mermaids, how mermaids are beautiful women that kind of draw sailors into their death. And I mean, that to me, that's another form of a succubus, because there's been a lot of reports through the ages of people seeing, or sailors seeing, beautiful mermaids.
Yeah, and that goes into the story of the sirens. They call them the sirens, and it's beautiful women that would cause sailors to wreck their ships. That these sirens would direct ships towards rocky areas to crash the ships, basically.
So throughout history, whether you call it an incubus or a succubus, there's been figures that have been key in different nationalities, different religious beliefs. I think of even the Irish and the Scottish banshee is a female woman or female demon. I mean, one of her tasks is she's supposed to foretell death, but I think it is a connotation you could acute a banshee with that as well. So, you know, these topics that we're bringing forth to you, we like to show the similarities on how maybe the names, the characteristics, what these individuals or demons look like have changed through time, but in a nutshell, they're really the same thing, just being molded to more modern, or really molded to fit the sign of the times.
Well, I want to bring it to a modern time, because this is something that again was once accepted in popular society and popular culture as something being factual and real, and people seeing these things to the point where they would draw images of what they were seeing, and the images within the different countries and places on the planet were very similar to each other. And so that leads us to believe that these people didn't have the internet or telephone. So, and if they were drawing the same images in different lands, that these things were pretty real for these people. And but to bring it to modern times and the investigations that we've done, and I'm not going to name no names, but we did a location in Bryan, Texas, where this lady said that she was basically being raped in her sleep at night. And we did. It took me about 5 or 6 hours to be touched by that spirit, and I was actually forcefully pushed by that spirit. But yeah, that was. We did another location in Somerville, Texas, where both the son and the mother, the son lived downstairs and the mother lived upstairs, that both of them were being attacked, one on by incubus and one on by a succubus. So we personally have experience dealing with these types of demons.
And I think it's important for people to really get an understanding. And I have a hard time, really, because in ancient times, these were things that were acceptable. They were a part of everyday life. I mean, when you have this Aramaic incantation bowl, you have tools to get rid of these. So they're acknowledging that these entities really existed. But now we get into more modern times. We're supposed to be more highly civilized, more educated, and here we won't even acknowledge, and somebody does. How, you know, go speak to somebody. How many people know what the words mean, though? Like, go talk to somebody, go have coffee with somebody today and say incubus and succubus, and you're going to get are they going to know what they are?
Well, no, because all they know is the Kardashians, and that irritates the hell out of me, because there's one channel. I know every time we went to the gym before, about in 2016 when we were going to the gym a lot, that every time we turned on a certain channel, it was nothing but the damn Kardashians on there. Remember?
Yeah, and people think that that's the ideal or the dream life. And, you know, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but that's really nothing but a fantasy. So I really don't think I'd want to live that lifestyle, even if it was given to me. I think our lifestyle that we, in our paranormal spiritual world, is far more exciting. And at least we get a chance to meet a lot of real people, and we get a chance to try and educate people on some of the experiences that we've had and some of the entities that we've confronted in our works.
Yes, and I'll tell you another thing that irritates me, now that we're on the topic of irritations, is Microsoft. Microsoft is beginning to piss me off. They have this thing that I would not recommend anybody buying anything with Microsoft on it except for Word or whatever, but they have this thing that will speak to you and say that they're trying to help you, and the damn thing keeps popping up every 10 minutes. And I mean, that just drives me absolutely crazy. I mean, I can't stand it.
Well, I think we've become more brain dead with technology because we've become lazy, and I think that's a lot. Back then, like Timothy was mentioning, that back in those days, there was no social media, no computer. If you wanted to eat, you had to go get your food. I mean, you're just not strolling into a 7-Eleven or whatever, a convenience store, and just buying what you feel like eating. You actually had to work, and that's why you were more aware of what was truly going on around you, because you're just not plopping in front of a video game or a couch or being on Facebook. And I know Timothy is quite annoyed with Facebook notifications.
Yeah, let me tell you that. I don't know if anybody out there can relate to us, but whenever we cut on our laptop, before the Wi-Fi is before you can ever type anything into the search engine, before the Wi-Fi pops up, I get Facebook notification you have 98 notifications. I hate Facebook, and so it's like, how there's some kind of conspiracy thing there where, how in the hell can Facebook be the first thing coming up when everything else is trying to get together?
I think it's truly a demon inside the computer, because I laugh whenever we try and do anything on the computer, and it just seems like the odds are against us, and we've got a little computer demon in there that it just has to give us a rough time. And I mean, I still don't get. There's people that, all they have is social media, and I really feel sorry for you, because there's a whole wide world out there, folks, that could be explored. You need more stimulation than sitting in front of a computer screen, and that's why, we want to try and bring topics that will make you ask questions and read books. Books, people, are not extinct. I want to tell you that, we read a lot of books in preparation for our investigation, in preparation for what we do. And in my mind, the actual paper book should never go extinct, because, there's been books that have been around for thousands of years, and a computer just doesn't cut it.
Yeah, the computer, it depends on who's inputting the information. They could actually get some of the information wrong. And so it's better to go back to the original books, and that's why the Vatican has such a vast library of books, and they keep them under lock and key.
It's only it would be it would be nice one day with all the secrets that are in the Vatican library, if the public really could have access or be aware of that. But they continue to spoon feed, and really everybody in the world are on a need to know basis according to them. And again,
you know why I believe it's on the lock and key in the Vatican library? I believe it's on the lock and key because when you first get in there, you probably have a lot of child pornography in there. And so, and it's a shame to have religious texts with the child pornography. I mean,
you know what? I don't know if I can really be on that same wavelength with you, but I think that the Catholic Church, the more knowledge that individuals have, the less control they will have over you. And let's face it, it's all about power. It's all about mind control. So the more educated and the more smart people become and more aware of what's going on, the less able they are to be controlled. And that's been going on since the very beginning of Christianity. Let's face it, folks, I'm not being derogatory. I'm just stating facts. I mean, knowledge is power, make no mistake about it. And the more that the Catholic Church, or really Christianity, keeps you like a lamb, you're far easier for the wolves to control and to herd into slaughter. I mean,
the funny thing is, in the Vatican Library, they actually have Sumerian texts and Mesopotamian texts referring to the succubus and the incubus and the Lilith, but they won't let us see it. And so I talked to a priest one time who was very aggravated. He went over there and he actually spoke and could read Hebrew really well. And they would not even let one of their own priests see it. I think that when the Catholic Church is trying to they need to mass produce these books and put them out there so everybody can get them, instead of just keeping them from themselves. If these books are no good, why would they keep them from themselves?
Yeah, but here's another question to ponder too. I mean, the Catholic Church, or the Church or the Vatican, wanted the masses to think for how many years that the earth was flat. And then when we had all these navigators, all these explorers that had charts, they tried to stifle or shut them up, because they wanted the whole world to consider the world was flat. And when scientists and even Leonardo da Vinci and all these different people, even John Dee, were questioning all this and said, well, we have proof, or we have facts that it's not flat, they begin to panic, and that's when the church considers you a heretic.
But what about I know that between West Texas and New Mexico, the earth is very much flat. The planet is round.
That's right, but I mean, these navigators and these early explorers, they just didn't want to be force-fed what the church. I mean, how would the church really know? I mean, I guess they're saying God is saying it's flat. They just manipulated, I think, the word of God to try and keep people under wraps, and they didn't want people to explore, because then again they're going to lose their control over their flock.
Why do you think that the Catholic Church made sure, when they were putting the biblical text together, their New Testament Bible together, why do you think that they inputted, and I don't believe that Jesus ever said this, I believe it was inputted by the Catholic Church, because we know the New Testament was written 100 years after Christ died. Why do you think that they put, blessed are those who are like children? Because they want you to be dumb. They don't want you to have knowledge. Now, we know that God didn't want us to have certain knowledge, because he didn't want Adam and Eve to go to that tree of knowledge. But yeah.
So we're saying right from the beginning of time, you were force-fed what knowledge you were able to have.
Well, I'm saying right from the beginning of Christ existed, that time period. Not Christ existed, but right from the time period of when the New Testament was created, which would be 100 BC, after Christ died. Not BC, AD. Yeah. Sorry, folks. I'm coughing. I'm getting things a little mixed up. But, okay. So, 100 years after Christ died, 100 AD is when you had the New Testament Bible created. And it was at that time that brainwashing really started being on a mass level. And we were told to be like children and not seek knowledge and just be ignorant. Now, if the Pope really believed that, and the Catholic Church really believes that, why do they have such a vast library?
And going back to what we were talking about, the witch's hammer and stuff, and let's face it, the majority of the alleged witches were actually women, and really, I think that was that's
because if it was a male witch, it'd be a warlock.
Ha ha ha, smarty pants. But the point I'm trying to get across to the listeners out there is that I truly believe the witch's hammer, the Malus Macaulay, was actually instilled because women, they wanted to again suppress women, and a lot of women during those particular times were healers. They could see things. They were sayers. They were really powerful women, and I think this was the church's blanket way just to get rid of these women because they were becoming, in my words, too uppity and forgot their place. So I mean, whether they were true witches or not, I mean, there are people that are true witches, but this was just the way that the church figured, you know what, sorry, we've got to get rid of the masses because they were becoming
What was up
less
to
to control.
Modern times when you could have female priests, and it was just recently that was able to happen. But what I'm saying is, the churches in traditional Christianity not meaning original Christianity. There's original Christianity and there's traditional Christianity. The churches of traditional Christianity, tradition being, if your mother told you something was in the Bible, it may not be in there, but you start thinking it's in the Bible. These priests and preachers and pastors of traditional Christianity is hiding the fact that Lilith existed, is hiding the fact that succubus exists, and is hiding the fact that incubus exists.
And, to talk on, yesterday in our podcast, we talked about Dr. John Dee being the advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. And Queen Elizabeth I, in my mind, she was a real rock star of her time because I admire her totally because she was a woman. She was branded as a bastard because, of course, her mother was never acknowledged. Anne Boleyn was never acknowledged by a true queen. So she had to make it up the ranks. And, to have a woman in a position of power, and she was going against Spain. And as we know, Spain at that time, everything was run by the Pope, very Catholic, and they were bringing the bowels of the Inquisition with them, trying to overtake England. And I'm telling you, to have a woman kick the ass of the Pope and the Catholic Church at that time and saying, no, we're not going to have your BS come into England. That's a rock star, and that's a woman. And she was branded, again, same format as a Lilith. All these powerful women in history could be considered a Lilith because she was called the Virgin Queen, all these derogatory terms. But she really, that battle was the greatest defeat in Spanish naval history. So, by a woman.
Male and female, on the very beginning of creation, were created equal. And that's something that you need to remember.
But throughout time after that point, there's been an uneven balance of power with female and male, even through ancient Egypt with the Cleopatra, these Nefertiti, these powerful women. It was still an uneven teeter-totter in a power struggle.
Well, let me tell you, as a veteran, I would never want to go to war with a female.
Wow, you know what?
No, let me explain.
Why?
By my side.
Why?
Because the terrorists were using the other militaries, and the terrorists were using dogs. And when you look at the fact that dogs have a very strong sense of smell, the last thing you want to do is be in an area and a woman catches her period. You're giving up your what the hell difference does it make about whatever camouflage you got on?
Oh, so it's just like even World War II or whatever, and your ship was torpedoed, and you had women in there that had their period. Who's going to track the sharks in the water?
There were women in the ships in World War II?
I'm just saying if there was.
There was never women in the ships.
I said, what if there was? So please.
Well, that would be a good time to have a woman, actually. If your ship's torpedoed, throw her overboard and let the sharks go that way, and you go on the other side of the ship. But
you know what? Folks, I'm really biting my tongue to the point where it's almost bleeding here because this is a very twisted. I'm
not twisted because we're doing this podcast, and I'm doing this podcast to help people understand that women were never created to be submissive to men, never created to be unequal to men, and that is representative into the mind. The mind of Lilith. Her whole mentality was, look, you're not going to tell me what to do. I'm not digging you, so I'm leaving. But I blame the angel Samuel for that too, because he had to come down and really he wanted some of that Lilith. And so Adam had competition, but how can Adam compete with an angel?
Okay, I'm going to ask you a personal question, and you may not want to answer this or not. As a man, do you prefer a submissive female or a dominant female? Now, I'm not talking about sexual. I'm just talking about to hang with.
I don't hang with females.
Well, I'm talking about to have conversations. Like, do you feel empowered by a submission, like being submissive or dominant?
I plead the fifth. My attorney has advised me to plead the fifth.
You guys are probably laughing your ass off, but you know what? We're real. We don't script this because we want to bring you stuff that is off the cuff, because when we have conversations, we're real people. We're not going to have these scripts that we're trying to read, this dry, stale stuff, because you can read dry, stale stuff on the internet. We want to just kind of make you laugh, maybe make you cry, maybe make you angry. I don't know.
We definitely want to educate you, because I hope that you were to learn something about succubus and incubus, and again the time periods and the archaeologists that have found so many artifacts that state that these things are real. And
why today are we afraid to have these conversations? Why are we being muffled or stifled? I mean, back in the day, these entities were real. They were part of everyday life. And now, thousands of years later, you're not going to go to coffee and say, last night I was...
attacked by a succubus or incubus.
It's not everyday conversation.
I don't really see the downside of it from a male perspective about laying in bed and getting attacked by a succubus. I don't understand the downside of it. I don't really see it.
Has that ever happened in your life or through other investigations?
No, just through the investigations that we've done.
Right.
So we have personal experience dealing with this stuff, and again, we've seen it we've seen the incubus, we've seen the succubus. So we definitely have first-hand knowledge of this stuff, and we know it's real, and that's why we wanted to bring it to you on the podcast. So if you're ever laying in bed and you feel like you've been sexually attacked at night, chances are you probably have. And if you wake up tired, it's probably from the sexual encounter that you've had.
Yeah, but as from a male's perspective, is that where the terminology wet dreams came from?
No, terminology wet dreams come from after you ejaculate. It's wet, so...
No, I realize that, but is that where it kind of spurred from that?
It's a difference between a wet dream and not having a dream and ejaculating. Because in a dream, you could definitely know it's a dream, and you can wake up and say, okay, I had a wet dream because I know exactly what happened, and I've ejaculated. But if you didn't have a dream and you ejaculated, then there you go.
So that's evidence of having a succubus visit you there.
Succubus,
possibility,
or from incubus.
So it can be two ways.
Yeah. So what happens in the female perspective when y'all have wet dreams? Just get overly wet down there, or what happens? You wake up and your panties are all soaked. What happens?
If you wear panties, I guess that's what or if you're just overly moist in that particular area and it's not that you urinated all over yourself.
So yeah, that would be evidence of an incubus then. Yeah.
And I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. We've been getting a lot of positive feedback from the previous podcast. Very important. If you could listen, if you could share. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. Yeah, we are always sort of down on social media, but it's a way that we can get our message out to all of you. But very important, click that like button on YouTube. Very important, because likes are important too.
Right down the screen from where you're watching this at. If you're watching it on YouTube, there's a like button. Click it. There's a subscribe button. Click it. Subscribe. Like.
Because
comment. Give us feedback. Comment. If you didn't like what we talked about, if there's a subject that you want to hear, comment and we'll do it for you.
Because you know what? In all of our podcasts and moving forward, we're always going to tell you exactly the way it is. We're not going to sugarcoat anything. We're not going to just, I can't say this stuff on a podcast. That is not us, folks. What's the point of sugarcoating or making something politically correct? There's too many people out there that are very cautious on how they word things. We're just going to say the reality of the situation, and we're going to just keep it very, very real. There's so many people that are very plastic, unreal. We are not those people. If somebody approaches us when we meet different people on the street, we are real folks. We're going to tell you the real deal. There's no point in just being untruthful, because you know what, it's not going to pay off.
But check this out. There's a lady named Shauna that I think I'm pronouncing her name right. Shauna, Shona, who she sent us a message saying she's glad that we're talking in one of our podcasts we talked about ley lines. We will have upcoming podcasts, particularly on ley lines. So stay tuned for that one. Tomorrow we may have a musical guest for y'all. So stay tuned for that one. And we do have several bands that have dabbled in the paranormal, and that will be appearing on the show. So
yeah, because we want to kind of go to uncharted territories. We want to go where maybe a lot of people have feared to tread before, so we want to give you a lot of diversity in the topics that we cover, whether it be musical bands. I mean, everybody, let's face it, has maybe had an experience with the paranormal world but may have been afraid to relay it. Musicians that have the outward appearance and do practice different religious beliefs, you may want to hear about it. So that's why we want to be as diverse as we can with the topics that we bring in. You may not think it's paranormal related, but you bet your boots it's going to be.
Yeah, and I grew up in the 80s. So growing up in the 80s, I was born in 74, so that puts an age limit on me.
Wow, you actually get your calculators and you can figure it out.
Yeah, I'm 44 years old. I was born in 1974. But my teen years happened in my preteen and teen years happened in the 80s. And that was an excellent decade. I mean, if anybody knows about the metal bands and groups like Slayer, and you have King Diamond, and you have those types of groups who really were who had a lot of knowledge on spells, and King Diamond is an admitted Satanist, but it's very interesting some of the things and knowledge that he has on certain things as well. And so Slayer claims they are not satanic, but they have done satanic things. And so actually, they're a little known fact is they're one of their rhythm guitar player died from a spider bite. So yeah, that's crazy.
Talking about spiders, we seen 2 spiders outside our door yesterday.
yeah, and they were having sex, and she conveniently hit one of them with a rock and knocked it down.
I felt so bad for that after, because as many of you may or not know, I love spiders. I have a huge passion for snakes and any creepy crawlers. Actually, I did a video on a spider mummifying his victim alive, and that really rocked. But I hope I didn't injure them. I hope they got their business done before I knocked them down.
Yeah, well, see, what a lot of people don't understand is I was bitten by a brown recluse in Texas. Brown recluses are very much all over the place. And I was bitten, this is going to sound funny to people, but I was bitten on the left butt cheek by a brown recluse. And no, I was not naked laying in the woods when the spider bit me. What happened was I was sitting on a stool. And you know how when you sit down on a stool, that the back part of your pants will actually like separate a little bit from your waist area?
I mean, you can see your crack.
Yeah, well, and so the spider actually managed to crawl down to my left butt cheek and bite me. I did not know it was a brown recluse at the time, and about 72 hours later, I was having a physical altercation with somebody, and this was a few years back, and during that physical altercation, I was thinking I'm in trouble because I can't even see this person. And I knew that, and I was sweating really, really bad. And so I ended up going to the emergency room, and the doctor said, I can't even wait and send you anywhere. I have to start cutting right now. What it was doing was it was liquefying my flesh on my cheek. And so I had to have the nurses all gather around to watch the doctor take a scalpel and cut all this stuff out of my left butt cheek. And they were laughing about it. And I guess it does seem kind of funny because, who the hell's ever been bitten on the ass by a spider?
Well, that's, God, thank God the spider didn't travel further down your crack, because I don't, sorry, that was a little bit inappropriate.
Thank God it didn't crawl down my front.
God knows what kind of damage it would have done then, but I'm very grateful that it decided to go on the back side, not the front side of you.
Yeah. So that's going to be it for today's show. Hopefully we'll have a musical guest on for you tomorrow, talking about their paranormal experience and things of that nature. And check it out.
Remember, like, click the like button, subscribe, and share. And we need feedback for that's
we need
very
feedback.
important.
Comment. Throw in a comment. You can comment on here. Throw a comment in the comment section.
Any comment is appreciated. We consider it constructive criticism. If there's something a topic that you think that we could bring to you that you would enjoy, please do so, because we want to know how we're doing and what you think of the topics that we're bringing forward to you.
And we started working out recently, and I'm using a pre-workout by Rich Piana, 5% nutrition. It's called Kill It, and it seems to be working pretty good. So I'll let y'all know and keep y'all posted on that. But okay, that's it for today.
See y'all.